Tommy Wilson, a disabled war veteran, just wanted to buy his son a birthday cake. But when a cruel cop mocked his sacrifice and tried to tow his van, something amazing happened. 50 Marines appeared out of nowhere and blocked every exit. What happened next will restore your faith in brotherhood. Before watching full story, comment below from where are you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Tommy Wilson sat in his old van outside the supermarket. He looked at his fake leg inside. 3 years ago he was running and jumping like any other soldier. Now everything was hard. Today was his son Billy's birthday. Billy was turning 7. Tommy promised to buy him a big chocolate cake from the bakery inside the store. Tommy put on his fake leg and grabbed his walking stick. He slowly got out of the van. He had parked in the disabled parking spot. His blue parking pass was hanging from his mirror just like always. The store was busy. People stared at Tommy as he walked slowly with his stick. He tried to ignore them. At the bakery counter, the nice lady smiled at him. "Hello, Mr. Wilson. I have Billy's cake ready. Chocolate with 7 candles just like you wanted." Tommy smiled. For a moment he felt normal. He felt like a regular dad buying cake for his son. He paid for the cake and started walking back to his van. But when he got outside his heart sank. A police officer was standing next to his van. The officer was writing a ticket. He looked young and mean. His name tag said Officer Johnson. "Hey, that's my van," Tommy called out. "Is something wrong?" Officer Johnson looked at Tommy's fake leg and walking stick. A nasty smile came across his face. "Yeah, something's wrong. You parked in a disabled spot without permission." Tommy was confused. "But I have my disabled parking pass. It's right there on my mirror." "I don't see any pass," Johnson lied. The blue pass was clearly hanging there, but he pretended not to see it. "Sir, it's right there. The blue one on my mirror." Johnson walked to the front of the van and looked through the window. "I still don't see anything. And even if there was one, how do I know it's really yours? People steal these things all the time." Tommy felt his heart beating fast. This had happened before. Some people didn't believe he was really disabled because he could still walk a little bit. "Officer, I can show you my veteran card and my ID. The pass is registered to me." "Sure, everyone has a story," Johnson said, still writing the ticket. "Half you people aren't really disabled. You just want special treatment." The words hurt Tommy like a punch. He had lost his leg fighting for his country. Now this cop was saying he was fake. "Sir, I lost my leg in Afghanistan," Tommy said quietly. His voice was shaking. "I have all the papers to prove it." "Afghanistan?" Johnson laughed. "Let me guess, you're some kind of war hero? You probably never even left the base. I bet you hurt that leg slipping in the shower." Some people had stopped to watch. Tommy felt embarrassed and angry, but he tried to stay calm. Fighting with a cop would only make things worse. "Please, officer. My son's birthday party starts in 1 hour. I just need to get home with his cake." "You should have thought about that before you parked illegally," Johnson said. Then he spoke into his radio. "I need a tow truck here. Someone parked illegally in a disabled spot." A voice came from the radio. "Officer Johnson, our computer shows that vehicle has valid disabled registration." Johnson frowned and turned his radio down. Computer must be wrong. Send the tow truck anyway. Tommy couldn't believe it. Did the radio just say my registration is valid? "I didn't hear that," Johnson lied. "Step away from the vehicle. It's being towed." 3 men in regular clothes had been watching everything. They looked like military men, short hair, straight backs, strong builds. Their names were Sergeant Mike Torres, Corporal Dan Kim, and Private Alex Thompson. They were Marines buying supplies for their unit's barbecue. Torres, who had been in the Marines for 15 years, felt angry watching the scene. He could tell Tommy was a fellow soldier by the way he carried himself. "That's not right," Torres said quietly to his friends. "That cop is being cruel." Kim nodded, making fists with his hands. "Look at that guy's fake leg. He's clearly a veteran." Thompson, who was only 22, was very angry. "We need to do something." "Easy, Marine," Torres said quietly, but he kept watching. "Let's see what happens first." The tow truck came very fast. As the driver started hooking up Tommy's van, Tommy stood there helplessly, still holding his son's birthday cake. "This is wrong," Tommy said, almost whispering. "I served my country. I gave my leg for this country. And I'm supposed to care about that?" Johnson said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Everyone thinks they're a hero these days. Everyone wants special treatment." That's when Torres had heard enough. "Marines," he called out in a loud, commanding voice. "Come here." Kim and Thompson quickly moved to stand with Torres. But they weren't alone. From all over the parking lot, other men started walking toward them. They were Marines, some still serving, some veterans, some reservists who happened to be shopping. Word spread fast through the local military community. Someone had posted about what was happening on Facebook. Within minutes, Marines from the nearby military base started arriving. In just 5 minutes, more than 30 Marines had surrounded the parking lot. They stood at every exit, making a human wall that the tow truck couldn't get through. More Marines kept coming. Officer Johnson suddenly found himself facing a crowd of serious-looking military men. Many regular people had gathered too, and lots of them were recording everything with their phones. "What's going on here?" Johnson demanded, but he didn't sound confident anymore. Torres stepped forward. His voice was calm but strong. "Officer, we're here to make sure our brother gets the respect he deserves." "This is none of your business," Johnson replied, but he was clearly worried. "This man parked illegally." "No, he didn't," called out a voice from the crowd. The bakery lady had come outside with her phone. "I recorded everything. This young man has parked in that same spot for 2 years, always with his proper pass displayed." Another person spoke up. "I saw everything too." The cop ignored his own radio when it said the registration was valid. Johnson looked around nervously as more people agreed with Tommy's story. The tow truck driver started looking uncomfortable. "Look," the driver said to Johnson, "maybe we should just—" "You'll finish the job I called you for," Johnson snapped, but his voice cracked. Torres took another step forward. "Officer, I'm Staff Sergeant Torres, United States Marine Corps. The man behind you is Corporal Rodriguez, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. He lost his leg when his convoy hit a bomb while helping civilians. He has 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star." The crowd murmured when they heard this. Tommy looked up in surprise. He had never told anyone about his medals. "How do you know that?" Tommy asked quietly. Torres smiled a little. "Your unit patch is still on your keychain, Marine. And I know Mickey Reeves, he served with you. He told me your story." Tommy felt tears in his eyes. For the first time since his injury, someone recognized not just his sacrifice but his honor. "Now, officer," Torres continued, turning back to Johnson, "I'm asking you nicely to have that tow truck let go of Corporal Rodriguez's vehicle and apologize for your terrible behavior." "You can't tell me how to do my job," Johnson replied, but his voice was shaking. He was greatly outnumbered. "You're right," Torres agreed. "But we can stand here all day. And we will. Every exit is blocked by Marines who have nothing better to do than make sure our brother gets the respect he earned." More Marines kept arriving. Someone had called the local Marine veterans group, and older veterans joined the younger active duty men. The crowd now had over 50 people and it was still growing. The tow truck driver made the decision for everyone. "Look, Officer Johnson, I'm not getting paid enough for this. I'm unhooking the van." "You can't do that," Johnson protested. "Watch me," the driver replied, already working to free Tommy's vehicle. "I have 3 sons in the military. I won't be part of disrespecting a wounded veteran." As the van was freed, the crowd started clapping. Tommy stood there, still holding his son's cake, overwhelmed by the support from complete strangers. Officer Johnson, seeing he was completely outnumbered and that dozens of phones were recording him, made one last try to stay in control. "This is obstruction of justice. I could arrest all of you." Torres's face didn't change. "For what? Standing in a public parking lot? Supporting a fellow veteran? Go ahead, officer. Arrest 50 Marines and see how that looks on the news." Just then another police car pulled up and Sergeant Patricia Williams got out. Williams had been a cop for 20 years and had heard about the situation on the radio. She looked at the scene, the crowd of Marines, the phones recording everything, and Officer Johnson looking desperate, and immediately understood. "Johnson," she called out sharply. "Stand down." "Sergeant, this man was—" "I said stand down," Williams repeated, walking over to Tommy. "Sir, I'm Sergeant Williams. I want to personally apologize for Officer Johnson's behavior. Your vehicle registration shows valid disabled status, and there was never any reason to call for a tow." Tommy nodded, still trying to understand what had just happened. "Thank you, ma'am." Williams turned to address the crowd. "I want to thank all of you for your service, and I want you to know that Officer Johnson's behavior does not represent our police department. We have nothing but respect for our veterans." She then walked over to Johnson, whose face had gone white. "Officer Johnson, return to the station immediately. We'll be discussing your future with this department." As Johnson reluctantly got in his police car and drove away, the crowd began to leave. But before they went, something amazing happened. One by one the Marines walked up to Tommy. They didn't speak much, they just shook his hand or patted his shoulder. No words were needed, it was their way of showing respect and brotherhood. Torres was the last to approach. "Corporal Rodriguez," he said, holding out his hand. "Just Tommy," Tommy replied, shaking Torres's hand firmly. "And thank you. I don't know how to repay this." "You already did," Torres replied simply. "You served. That's all any of us can ask." As the parking lot returned to normal, Tommy carefully put his son's cake in his van. His hands were shaking slightly, not from fear or anger anymore, but from an overwhelming feeling of gratitude and belonging that he hadn't felt since before his injury. He drove home in a daze, thinking about what had just happened. When he pulled into his driveway, his wife Sarah came running out, looking worried. "Tommy? I saw on Facebook, there was some kind of trouble at the store? Are you okay?" Tommy got out of the van slowly, then hugged his wife tight. "I'm more than okay," he said softly. "I remembered something today." "What's that?" "I remembered that I'm not alone. That I'm still part of something bigger than myself." That afternoon, Billy's birthday party was everything a 7-year-old could want. The chocolate cake was perfect, the decorations were beautiful, and his daddy seemed happier than he had been in years. But the real party was just beginning. Throughout the day, Marines began showing up at Tommy's house. They brought gifts for Billy, not expensive presents but meaningful ones. A Marine teddy bear, a wooden flag, a picture book about military dogs. Each gift came with a simple card, "For the son of a hero." By evening, Tommy's backyard was full of Marines, both active and retired, all there to celebrate not just Billy's birthday, but to welcome Tommy back into the brotherhood he thought he had lost. Staff Sergeant Torres found Tommy sitting quietly on his back porch, watching his son play with his new Marine friends. "Rough morning," Torres said, sitting down beside him. "Best morning I've had in 3 years," Tommy replied, surprising them both. "How do you figure?" Tommy was quiet for a long moment. "When I got injured, I thought my service was over. I thought I was done being a Marine. Today you all reminded me that once a Marine, always a Marine. Being disabled doesn't change that." Torres nodded. "You're right. It doesn't. The Corps takes care of its own, Tommy. That's not just words, it's a promise." As the sun set over the celebration in Tommy's backyard, Officer Johnson was in his supervisor's office, trying to explain his actions. By the end of the week he would be looking for a new job. The story of what happened at the supermarket spread quickly through social media and local news. The video taken by witnesses showed clearly what had happened, and public opinion strongly supported Tommy. But for Tommy, the real victory wasn't in Johnson's punishment, it was in rediscovering his place in the world. Over the following weeks and months, he began attending Marine veterans meetings, volunteering with veteran support groups, and slowly rebuilding the confidence that his injury had taken away. 6 months later, Tommy stood before a group of recently wounded veterans at the VA hospital, sharing his story. He told them about the dark days after his injury, about feeling lost and alone, and about the morning when a group of Marines reminded him who he really was. "You are not your wounds," he told them, his voice strong and clear. "You are not your limitations. You are Marines, sailors, soldiers, airmen. You are warriors who served with honor, and that honor doesn't disappear because you're injured." In the audience, Staff Sergeant Torres smiled. He had watched Tommy transform from a broken man into a leader again, and he knew that the effects of that morning would continue to spread. After Tommy finished speaking, a young Marine who had lost both legs approached him. "Sir," the Marine said, "I've been feeling sorry for myself. But after hearing your story, I think I need to remember who I am." Tommy put his hand on the young Marine's shoulder. "You're a Marine," he said simply. "And Marines don't give up. Ever." As he drove home that evening, Tommy thought about how much his life had changed since that morning in the parking lot. He had found his purpose again, his place in the world. He had remembered that being a Marine wasn't something he used to be, it was something he would always be. And sometimes when life tried to knock you down, your brothers would be there to remind you to get back up. The next morning, Tommy woke early and put on his Marine Corps t-shirt, something he hadn't done since his injury. When Billy saw him at breakfast, he smiled widely. "Daddy, you look happy today." "I'm happy, buddy. I remembered something important." "What's that?" Tommy smiled, messing up his son's hair. "I remembered that your daddy is still a Marine." Billy nodded seriously as if this was obvious. "I always knew that, Daddy." And in that moment, Tommy realized he was right. Billy had always known, even when Tommy had forgotten. Sometimes it takes the support of your fellow Marines to remind you of truths that those who love you never doubted. The story of Officer Johnson and the Marines became a reminder to the community about treating veterans with respect. But more than that, it became proof of the unbreakable bonds formed in service, bonds that don't weaken with time or distance or injury. For Tommy Wilson, former Corporal, United States Marine Corps, it was the beginning of understanding that coming home from war doesn't mean the mission is over. Sometimes, the most important battles are fought not on foreign battlefields, but in supermarket parking lots, where the enemy is disrespect and the weapon is simple human decency. And sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys win. 1 year later, Tommy got a call that changed his life again. It was from the mayor's office. "Mr. Wilson, this is Mayor Jackson's office. The mayor would like to offer you a position as Veterans Affairs Coordinator for our city." Tommy was shocked. "I don't understand. Why me?" "Sir, after what happened at the supermarket and seeing how you've helped other veterans, we think you're perfect for the job. You understand what veterans go through." Tommy accepted the job. Now he spent his days helping other veterans with their problems, getting benefits, finding jobs, dealing with disability issues. It felt good to have a purpose again. On his first day at the new job, Tommy walked into his office and found a surprise. There was a big welcome card signed by over 100 Marines and veterans from the community. Torres had organized it. "Welcome to your new mission, Marine," the card said. Tommy smiled and put the card on his desk where he could see it every day. Meanwhile, Officer Johnson had been fired from the police force. He tried to get jobs at other police departments, but the video of his behavior had spread everywhere. No one wanted to hire him. Johnson learned a hard lesson about treating people with respect, especially those who had sacrificed for their country. The supermarket also made changes. They put up new signs honoring veterans and hired Tommy to give talks to their employees about treating disabled customers with respect. Every month, the Marines who had helped Tommy that day met at his house for dinner. They called themselves Tommy's Squad. They would share stories, help each other with problems, and make sure no veteran in their community ever faced disrespect alone. Billy, now 8 years old, loved these dinners. He would sit and listen to the Marines tell stories. He decided he wanted to be a Marine too when he grew up, just like his daddy. "Daddy," Billy said one night after the Marines had left, "I'm proud of you." "Why, buddy?" "Because you help people. And because you're brave." Tommy hugged his son tight. 3 years ago he had felt like his life was over. Now he had a job he loved, friends who cared about him, and a son who looked up to him. The story of that day at the supermarket became famous in the veteran community. People shared it online, wrote articles about it, and used it as an example of how veterans should support each other. Tommy started getting invited to speak at military bases, veteran events, and schools. He always told the same message: no veteran should ever face disrespect alone. We are a family and families stick together. One day, a young soldier came up to Tommy after a speech. The soldier was in a wheelchair, having lost both legs in combat. "Sir," the soldier said, "I've been thinking about giving up. But your story gives me hope." Tommy knelt down next to the wheelchair. "What's your name, soldier?" "Private Martinez, sir." "Well, Private Martinez, let me tell you something. That wheelchair doesn't define who you are. Your service does. Your courage does. Your willingness to fight for what's right does." Martinez nodded, tears in his eyes. "And remember," Tommy continued, "you're never alone. We're all here for you." 6 months later, Martinez called Tommy with good news. He had gotten a job, started college, and was dating a wonderful girl who loved him for who he was. "You were right, sir," Martinez said. "I'm not alone." These were the moments that made Tommy's new life worthwhile. Every veteran he helped, every person he inspired, every act of kindness he witnessed, they all traced back to that morning in the supermarket parking lot. Tommy often thought about how one bad moment had turned into so many good ones. Officer Johnson's cruelty had accidentally brought together a community of people who cared about each other. Sarah, Tommy's wife, watched her husband become confident and happy again. "You know," she told him one evening, "I think that awful cop actually did us a favor." "How do you figure?" "He reminded you of who you really are. And he showed you that you have an entire family of Marines who will always have your back." Tommy nodded. She was right. Sometimes the worst moments in life led to the best changes. The Marines who had surrounded the parking lot that day became lifelong friends. They supported each other through job changes, family problems, health issues, and all the challenges of life after military service. Torres got promoted to gunnery sergeant and often told new Marines about the importance of supporting their brothers and sisters, both in service and after. Kim started a non-profit organization that helped disabled veterans find jobs. He named it Parking Lot Warriors after that day. Thompson became a police officer, determined to show that law enforcement could treat veterans with the respect they deserved. All of them stayed in touch with Tommy, and all of them continued to help other veterans in their communities. 5 years after the incident, the city held a special ceremony to honor Tommy's work with veterans. Hundreds of people attended, including many of the Marines from that day. Mayor Jackson presented Tommy with a key to the city. "Tommy Wilson has shown us that true heroes don't stop serving when they come home," the mayor said. "They find new ways to help their brothers and sisters." As Tommy stood on the stage looking out at the crowd, he saw Torres, Kim, Thompson, and dozens of other Marines who had become his extended family. He saw Sarah and Billy in the front row, beaming with pride. He thought about that scared, broken man who had been humiliated in a parking lot 5 years earlier. That man had felt worthless and forgotten. But that man had been wrong. "Thank you all for being here," Tommy said into the microphone. 5 years ago I thought my story was over. I thought I was used up, forgotten, done. But this community, this family of Marines and veterans and good people, showed me that my story was just beginning." The crowd applauded loudly. "We take care of each other," Tommy continued. "That's not just something we say. Something we do. Every day. For as long as we live." After the ceremony, as Tommy was talking with friends and family, a young woman approached him. She was wearing a Navy uniform. "Mr. Wilson," she said, "my name is Lieutenant Sarah Johnson." Tommy's face showed surprise. "Johnson?" "Yes, sir. Derek Johnson was my brother." Tommy didn't know what to say. "I wanted to apologize for what he did to you," she continued. "And I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" "Yes, sir. What happened that day and how you responded to it taught our whole family about respect and forgiveness. Derek learned from his mistakes. He's a different person now. He works with homeless veterans in another state, trying to make up for what he did." Tommy was amazed. Even Officer Johnson had found a way to turn his worst moment into something positive. "And me," Lieutenant Johnson continued, "I joined the Navy partly because of your story. I wanted to serve, and then I wanted to help veterans like you do." Tommy shook her hand. "Your brother made a mistake, but it sounds like he learned from it. That takes courage too." As the evening ended and people began to leave, Tommy stood in the parking lot where the ceremony had been held. It was the same parking lot where his van had almost been towed 5 years earlier. Torres walked up beside him. "Thinking about that day?" "Yeah," Tommy said. "It's funny how one bad moment can lead to so many good ones." "That's because you chose to make it good," Torres replied. "You could have stayed angry. You could have given up. But you chose to help others instead." Tommy smiled. "We all did. We all chose to make something good out of something bad." As they walked to their cars, Tommy felt grateful for everything that had happened, even the bad parts. Because without that cruel cop and that awful morning, he might never have discovered his true purpose in life. He might never have learned that being a Marine wasn't something he used to be, it was something he would always be. And that his real mission hadn't ended when he came home from war. It had just begun. Today, Tommy Wilson continues to work as Veterans Affairs Coordinator. He has helped over 500 veterans find jobs, get benefits, and rebuild their lives. The Marines from that day still meet monthly, and their group has grown to include over 200 veterans from all branches of the military. Billy Wilson is now 13 and still wants to be a Marine like his dad. He volunteers with his father's organization and has learned that true strength comes from helping others. The supermarket still displays a plaque honoring veterans, and Tommy's parking spot is permanently reserved with a sign that reads, "Reserved for Heroes." And sometimes, late at night, Tommy still thinks about that morning when he thought his world was ending. Now he knows it was actually the morning when his real life began.